There is a kind of power most people will never understand, the power of silence. Not the weak silence of fear, but the controlled silence of someone who knows exactly who they are and no longer needs validation from the outside world. Never complain, never explain, just relax is not a passive statement. It is a declaration of mastery. It is what happens when you outgrow the need to defend yourself, justify your choices, or convince anyone of your truth. And this message is not. Presence becomes heavier, not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. When you don't complain, you stop leaking energy. When you don't explain, you stop inviting judgment. And when you relax, you allow life to expose the truth on your behalf. Silence confuses those who expect reactions. Calm unsettles those who thrive on chaos. When you stop explaining yourself, people are forced to sit with their assumptions, and most cannot handle that discomfort. They want answers, they want reactions, they want access, and your refusal to give it becomes your strength. This is not arrogance, this is self-respect in its highest form. There comes a stage in life where you realize that explaining yourself doesn't bring clarity, it brings more questions. Complaining doesn't bring relief, it brings more weight. And reacting doesn't bring peace, it brings more battles. So you choose differently. You choose restraint. You choose composure. You choose to relax. Not because life is easy, but because you are no longer available for unnecessary emotional labor. When you adopt this mindset, you stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to prove your intentions to those who benefit from doubting them. You stop narrating your pain to people who don't have the capacity to hold it. Instead, you move in silence. You let results speak. You let time reveal motives. You let distance protect your peace. This philosophy is not about suppression. It is about discernment. It teaches you when to speak and, more importantly, when silence is the louder message. Complaining hands your power to circumstances. Explaining hands your power to opinions. Relaxing returns your power to yourself. And when you reclaim that power, everything around you starts to realign. People who never complain are often misunderstood. People who never explain are often projected onto. But people who learn to relax through it all develop a presence that cannot be shaken. They are no longer reactive. They are no longer defensive. They are observant, grounded, and internally anchored. They don't rush to be understood. They wait to be revealed. This is where real elevation begins. When you stop chasing validation, you start attracting respect. When you stop defending your name, life starts defending it for you. When you stop reacting emotionally, people reveal their intentions clearly. Silence becomes your filter. Calm becomes your shield. And peace becomes your standard. Complaining feels natural to the untrained mind. It gives the illusion of release, the sense that by speaking about discomfort, something will change. But in reality, complaining anchors you to the very situation you want to escape. Every time you complain, you rehearse powerlessness. You remind your mind and anyone listening that circumstances are in control, not you. Over time, this habit trains your identity to see obstacles as permanent and yourself as a victim of them. That is not honesty, it is self-sabotage disguised as expression. People who complain often believe they are being transparent. But transparency without discipline becomes leakage. Energy leaks through words. Attention leaks through emotion. The more you complain, the more you wire your nervous system for agitation rather than resolution. Instead of calming yourself, you relive the irritation again and again. You hand your peace to situations that don't deserve that level of access. And slowly, without noticing, complaining becomes your default language. There is also a social cost to complaining that most people underestimate. Listeners rarely feel inspired by complaints. They feel burdened by them. Even those who initially sympathize eventually distance themselves, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Complaints signal instability, helplessness, and emotional dependence. In contrast, silence paired with composure signals maturity, confidence, and inner control. People instinctively trust those who don't collapse under pressure. When you stop complaining, you begin to notice something uncomfortable but freeing. Many problems lose their intensity when they are not constantly verbalized. The mind amplifies whatever it repeatedly speaks. Remove the repetition, and the problem shrinks to its actual size. This doesn't mean ignoring reality, it means refusing to dramatize it. You still act, you still adjust, you still solve, but you do so quietly, efficiently, without broadcasting every discomfort. Complaining also invites unnecessary opinions. The moment you speak about your struggles, you open the door to advice you didn't ask for, judgments you didn't need, and interpretations that distort your truth. Suddenly, your experience no longer belongs to you, it belongs to the room. Silence protects ownership. When you keep things contained, you maintain authority over your narrative and clarity over your next move. There is strength in choosing restraint over reaction. Not because you are numb, but because you are selective. You understand that not every frustration deserves a voice, and not every inconvenience deserves emotional investment. By refusing to complain, you reclaim mental space. That space becomes awareness, becomes strategy, becomes progress. Over time, this discipline reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who endures life and start seeing yourself as someone who navigates it. Challenges become signals, not punishments. Obstacles become data, not drama. And because you are no longer leaking energy through complaints, you have more strength to actually change what needs to be changed. This is where calm authority begins to form. People notice it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. You become someone whose presence is steady, whose reactions are measured, whose silence carries weight, and that weight commands respect far more than words ever could. When you no longer complain, you don't become cold, you become clear. You don't become passive, you become intentional. You don't lose your voice, you refine it. And that refinement is the foundation for everything that follows. Explaining yourself often feels like a defense of truth, but more often than not, it is a reaction to discomfort. It begins the moment you sense doubt, judgment, or misunderstanding in someone else's eyes. Instead of standing firmly in your own clarity, you rush to fill the silence with justifications, hoping to be seen correctly. Yet every explanation subtly communicates uncertainty. It suggests that your decisions need external approval, that your truth is negotiable, and that other people's opinions hold weight over your inner authority. The more you explain, the more you invite interpretation. Words can be twisted, intentions can be questioned, and explanations can be reframed to fit someone else's narrative. What begins as a simple clarification quickly turns into a cycle where you feel compelled to say more, not because it's necessary, but because the listener refuses to be satisfied. This is how people lose control of their story, not through lies told about them, but through over-explaining their own truth. There is a hidden dynamic in explanation that many fail to recognize. Explaining places the other person in a position of judgment. When you explain, you unconsciously elevate the listener to the role of evaluator, as if they have the authority to approve or reject your reasoning. Silence removes that hierarchy. It levels the ground. You no longer plead your case, you simply stand by it, and standing by your decisions without explanation unsettles those who are used to controlling narratives. People who demand explanations are rarely seeking understanding. More often, they are seeking leverage. They want details to dissect, inconsistencies to exploit, and emotional reactions to provoke. When you deny them that access, their influence collapses. Your silence becomes a boundary, quiet, firm, and immovable. It communicates that your life is not a public debate and your choices are not up for interrogation. Learning when not to explain is an act of emotional intelligence. It requires trust in your own discernment and comfort with being misunderstood. Not everyone deserves clarity. Some people will misunderstand you regardless of how carefully you explain, because misunderstanding serves their agenda. Explaining to them only feeds the cycle. Silence, on the other hand, starves it. As you release the habit of over-explaining, you notice a shift within yourself. Anxiety lessens. The urgency to be validated fades. You no longer feel compelled to rush your thoughts into words. You respond when it's necessary and remain quiet when it's not. This restraint gives your words weight. When you do speak, people listen because they know you don't speak casually. There is also a deep sense of freedom that comes with this discipline. You stop editing yourself for comfort. You stop rearranging your truth to make it easier for others to digest. You realize that those meant to understand you will do so without excessive explanation, and those who aren't will never be satisfied, no matter how much you say. Silence after a decision is a sign of inner alignment. It says, I trust myself enough not to convince you. This kind of confidence is not loud or confrontational. It is quiet and grounded. And because it is grounded, it cannot be shaken by questions, accusations, or doubt. When you stop explaining, you reclaim control of your time, your energy, and your emotional bandwidth. You become less reactive and more deliberate. You stop performing clarity for others and start living it for yourself. That is real power. Relaxation is often misunderstood. Many confuse it with laziness, avoidance, or indifference. But true relaxation is none of those things. It is the visible result of inner control. It is what happens when your nervous system no longer lives in survival mode, when your mind is not constantly scanning for threats, and when your emotions are no longer hijacked by external chaos. To relax in situations that once triggered you is not weakness, it is mastery. When you relax, you remove yourself from the emotional battlefield. You are no longer reacting to provocations, reading between hostile lines, or preparing mental defenses. This disarms those who rely on your emotional engagement to feel powerful. Some people only feel significant when they can disturb your peace. The moment you remain calm, their influence disappears. Your relaxation denies them the reaction they were seeking. Calmness also reveals truth. People show their real intentions when they don't get the response they expect. When you stay relaxed instead of defensive, manipulative individuals grow impatient. They push harder, expose their motives, and reveal their insecurities. Your stillness becomes a mirror. In that mirror, their unrest becomes obvious, and your clarity sharpens without effort. Relaxation strengthens perception. When you are tense, your awareness narrows. You miss subtle cues, emotional shifts, and behavioral patterns, but when you are relaxed, you see more. You hear what is not said, you sense energy changes in a room, you notice who respects your boundaries and who resents them. Calm turns into intelligence turns into discernment. There is also a biological truth behind this discipline. A relaxed nervous system processes information better, makes decisions more accurately, and recovers faster from stress. When you choose to relax instead of react, you are not suppressing emotion, you are regulating it. Regulation is power. It allows you to respond strategically instead of impulsively. And strategy always outperforms emotion in the long run. People who remain relaxed during conflict are often underestimated. Others mistake their calm for passivity and push further, thinking there is no resistance. But calm people are not passive, they are selective. They act when action is effective, not when emotion demands it. This unpredictability makes them formidable. You cannot manipulate someone who does not rush to respond. Relaxation also protects your future. Emotional reactions create consequences that last longer than the moment itself. Words spoken in tension cannot be taken back. Decisions made in agitation often require repair. By staying relaxed, you avoid creating problems you later have to fix. Peace becomes preventative wisdom. As you embody this mindset, your presence changes. You speak slower, you move deliberately. Your silence carries intention instead of tension. People around you feel it. Some are comforted by it, others are unsettled by it. But either way, you are no longer easily influenced. You become internally anchored. Relaxation does not mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your well-being to protect it. It means you understand that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every situation deserves your reaction. You trust that clarity comes from stillness, not noise. There is a moment in personal growth where your identity stops being defined by reaction and starts being defined by presence. Silence and calm are the tools that create this shift. When you no longer rush to complain or explain, you begin to experience yourself differently. You are no longer the person who needs to be heard. You become the person who is felt, and being felt is far more powerful than being loud. Silence forces people to pay attention in a different way. Without constant verbal cues, others are left to interpret your stillness. They notice your consistency, your restraint, and your composure. Over time, this changes how they perceive you. You are no longer categorized as emotional, defensive, or reactive. You become grounded. People are trusted. People are respected. Calmness also rewires your self-image. When you remain composed in situations that once triggered anxiety or anger, your mind receives a new message: I can handle this. Confidence grows not from victories, but from regulation. Each time you choose calm over reaction, you reinforce inner stability. That stability becomes your new normal, and your identity quietly evolves. People often underestimate how much identity is shaped by habit. Complaining, explaining, and reacting form an identity of struggle. Silence, clarity, and relaxation form an identity of strength. As you practice restraint, you stop narrating your life to others and start living it from within. Your sense of self becomes less dependent on feedback and more anchored in inner alignment. This shift also changes your social dynamics. You stop oversharing, you stop seeking reassurance, you stop adjusting your truth to fit someone else's comfort. As a result, superficial connections fall away and authentic ones deepen. Silence filters relationships. Those who respect you stay. Those who need control drift away. Calm people carry authority without asserting it. They don't demand respect. They naturally receive it. Others sense that you are not easily influenced, not easily provoked, and not easily swayed. This creates a subtle hierarchy, not one of dominance, but one of stability. People look to those who are stable during uncertainty. As your identity reshapes, so does your decision-making. You act from clarity instead of emotion. You pause instead of rushing. You choose your words with intention or choose silence when words would dilute the moment. This discernment becomes part of who you are, not something you have to think about. There is also a spiritual dimension to this transformation. Silence allows intuition to speak. Calm creates space for inner guidance. When noise falls away, wisdom surfaces. You begin to trust your inner voice more than external opinions. That trust strengthens your sense of direction and reduces inner conflict. Over time, you no longer feel the urge to prove anything. Your energy becomes steady, your movements deliberate, your response is minimal but meaningful. People may not always understand you, but they will sense your depth. And depth commands respect without effort. Silence has a way of revealing what words often conceal. When you stop complaining and explaining, you remove the distractions that allow manipulation to hide. Many people rely on emotional noise, arguments, justifications, reactions to maintain control. When that noise disappears, their intentions become visible. Calm creates contrast, and in that contrast, truth stands out clearly. Manipulative individuals are uncomfortable with silence because silence removes their leverage. They depend on your reactions to steer conversations, extract information, or provoke emotional responses. When you remain quiet and relaxed, they lose their point of entry. Without your explanations, they cannot twist your words. Without your complaints, they cannot position themselves as saviors or judges. Your stillness blocks their strategies. Silence also disrupts expectation. People who come with hidden agendas often expect resistance, emotion, or defensiveness. When they encounter composure instead, they become unsettled. They talk more. They reveal more. They overstep boundaries. This is how silence becomes an observational tool. You don't need to confront or accuse, you simply watch. Behavior always exposes intention when it is not met with reaction. Envy becomes especially visible around calm people. Those who resent your growth often provoke conversations to draw you back into emotional engagement. When you refuse to participate, their frustration surfaces. They may label you as distant, arrogant, or cold. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because you are no longer accessible in the way they expect. Silence forces people to confront their projections. By not explaining yourself, you also stop feeding curiosity that has no good intent. Not everyone asks questions to understand. Some ask to gather information. Silence protects your plans, your progress, and your private process. It keeps your next move clean and uninterrupted. Those who truly support you don't need constant updates. Those who don't often reveal themselves through impatience. Calmness also neutralizes emotional traps. When someone tries to provoke guilt, urgency, or fear, relaxation becomes your defense. You don't deny emotions, you observe them without acting on them. This creates emotional sovereignty. You feel without being controlled by what you feel. That ability alone separates leaders from reactors. Over time, people adjust their behavior around you. Some become more respectful, sensing that manipulation no longer works. Others withdraw, realizing they cannot access you the way they once did. Both outcomes are beneficial. Silence refines your environment by exposing alignment and misalignment naturally. This process requires trust that you don't need to correct every misunderstanding or confront every subtle attack. Truth doesn't need protection when your behavior is consistent. Letting people reveal themselves through their actions is far more effective than arguing with their words. Silence, paired with relaxation, becomes a form of discernment. You see more by saying less. You protect your energy without confrontation, and you move forward with clarity, unburdened by unnecessary conflict. When you fully adopt the mindset of never complaining, never explaining, and choosing to relax, your life begins to move differently. Not faster in a frantic way, but smoother, more aligned. You stop forcing outcomes through emotional effort and start allowing progress through clarity and timing. This shift is subtle at first, but its impact is profound and long-lasting. One of the first changes you notice is improved decision-making. Without the pressure to justify yourself or seek reassurance, choices become cleaner. You listen more closely to your intuition and less to outside noise. You act when the moment is right, not when anxiety demands movement. This patience prevents costly mistakes and aligns you with opportunities that match your growth rather than challenge your stability. Your relationships also evolve. Calm attracts maturity. People who respect boundaries, value clarity, and operate from self-control naturally gravitate toward you. At the same time, chaotic dynamics fade away. You no longer engage in cycles of misunderstanding or emotional labor. This doesn't isolate you, it refines your circle. Fewer people, clearer energy, stronger connections. As you relax into this way of being, timing improves. You stop rushing explanations and stop chasing validation. As a result, doors open without force. Conversations unfold naturally. Opportunities appear without desperation. Life responds to your steadiness by meeting you halfway. This is alignment, not as a mystical idea, but as a practical result of inner regulation. This principle also strengthens resilience. When setbacks occur, you don't collapse into complaint or overanalysis. You observe, adjust, and continue. Your calm allows you to recover faster and maintain perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question alone shifts you from resistance to growth. Financially, professionally, and personally, this mindset creates leverage. People trust those who don't panic. They rely on those who don't overshare. They invest in those who remain composed under pressure. Your reputation becomes one of stability, and stability attracts responsibility, opportunity, and leadership. Emotionally, peace becomes consistent rather than conditional. You no longer require external circumstances to behave perfectly in order to feel grounded. You carry calm with you. This reduces stress, improves health, and restores mental clarity. Relaxation stops being something you do occasionally and becomes something you are. There is also a quiet confidence that develops when you live this way. You no longer feel invisible when silent. You feel centered. You don't fear misunderstanding. You accept it as part of independence. You trust that those meant to understand you will, without excessive explanation, and that trust frees enormous emotional space. Over time, your life begins to reflect your inner order. Less chaos, fewer unnecessary conversations, more meaningful outcomes. This is not luck. It is alignment created by self-discipline and restraint. At some point, you realize that peace is not something you argue for. It is something you embody. You no longer live in reaction to the world. You live in response to your own clarity. Life may still test you, misunderstand you, or challenge your boundaries, but it no longer controls your inner state. You have learned how to stay rooted while everything else moves. Silence becomes your final language, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand the value of timing and restraint. You no longer rush to correct assumptions or chase explanations. You trust that truth unfolds naturally when behavior remains consistent. This trust brings a deep internal calm that cannot be shaken by opinions, gossip, or temporary setbacks. There is a freedom that comes with letting go of the need to be understood. When you release that burden, your energy returns to you. You invest it in growth, creativity, and alignment instead of defense. Your life becomes less about reaction and more about intention. You choose where your attention goes, and that choice shapes your reality. In this final stage, relaxation is no longer a strategy, it is a state of being. You breathe deeper, you move slower, you listen more than you speak, you respond only when it adds value. People sense this shift. Some are inspired by it, some are unsettled by it, but none can ignore it. A calm presence has gravity. You stop announcing your progress and start living it. Some are inspired by it, some are unsettled by it, but none can ignore it. A calm presence has gravity. You stop announcing your progress and start living it. You stop explaining your choices and start standing by them. You stop complaining about obstacles and start navigating around them. This is not emotional suppression, it is emotional maturity. You feel deeply, but you are no longer driven by what you feel. Life begins to meet you differently at this level. Challenges feel manageable. Success feels grounded. Relationships feel intentional. You are no longer trying to control outcomes, only your response. And that control changes everything. This is the quiet life that speaks for itself. A life where peace is protected, energy is conserved, and wisdom is applied rather than preached. Where your silence is not emptiness but fullness. Where your calm is not indifference but strength. Never complain. Never explain. Just relax. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand.